Hey everyone, happy Friday. Hope everyone is doing well. Um, this week has been pretty good, pretty busy. Lots of good work though. It's the kind of busy that you're glad to have. I appreciate that and grateful for that. Um, Supposed to get some more snow here. We're in that part of the year of winter where it's like just snow. It doesn't melt and just piles up and up and up and up. So no huge storms, but just like snows like 6 inches, never goes away. Snows another 6 inches, never goes away. So that's the weather here. Although yesterday was warm enough where I could actually go for a run without a jacket on, which was pretty amazing. Yeah. Pretty amazing to do in February, anyways. But this week we're going to continue on about our discussion about building the optimal metabolism. So 2 weeks ago, I gave you a little overview of what I think the optimal metabolism kind of looks like and why I think the ability to burn both fat and carbohydrates efficiently under the right situations um, is a sign of a healthy metabolism. And last week we talked a little bit about what it means to burn fat, why we want to burn fat, in what situations we should be burning fat. So this week, we are going to talk a little bit about carbohydrates, everyone's favorite topic, tasty, yummy carbohydrates. So as I said, I think that a lot of people are you'll hear a lot of information out there, especially in the low carb space, that you don't need to eat carbohydrates. Your body should be burning fat, as much fat all the time as possible, and you should be, you don't really need carbohydrates to do really anything. And I think, while it's true, no one needs carbohydrates. You can survive perfectly fine without eating a single carbohydrate ever. But I don't know if that is ideal from a mental health point of view. And even to some degree, some people might argue that it's also not ideal from a health point of view, right? You may be able to get away with not eating carbohydrates and survive, but that doesn't mean that you're optimally healthy either. Some people see dips in different hormone levels, etc., when they don't have carbohydrates in their diets. It doesn't appear to be a hard and fast rule about the amount or who or what situations, etc. It's just that some people appear to see just you know worse hormone profiles when they eliminate carbohydrates in their diet. Some people also tend to may just have worse sleep and you know worse mental clarity, etc. Like there's all these subjective markers as well that people might run into. Some people report at a certain level, if they go below that carbohydrate level, that they just don't feel right. So there's that. Um, there's also, I think, from a mental point of view, I think not being able to go out or saying you're not going to enjoy a cupcake on your child's birthday, or a piece of cake on your child's birthday, or go out to a restaurant, your favorite restaurant, with your wife and celebrate your anniversary, or your wife or husband or significant other. Sorry, shouldn't assume that everyone's male. Your partner, and enjoy a special occasion with them, and partake in an alcoholic beverage, a glass of wine, maybe some of the yummy bread that's on the table, or some have a pasta dinner if that's your thing. To say that you're gonna, I think it limits a lot of social interaction, and I think that from that point of view, that mental health point of view, that's quite important, right? I've seen people turn down occasions where they might be exposed to certain high carbohydrate foods, and if you're eating them because they don't want to be tempted by it, so they say they don't go and they stay home, right? Or they don't interact with these people, right? And I don't think that's healthy. I don't think that's a good approach either. So I think there's various different reasons why um I think people should be able to consume carbohydrates, and it's up to you whether you want to or not. I don't care if you want to eat a low carb diet and never have a cupcake the rest of your life. If that's works for you, that's great. I'm fine with that, right? That's perfectly fine. But I think you should be able to consume carbohydrates, whether it's for a special occasion or just on the regular, because you like to eat potatoes and you like to have a banana and you like to have maybe some honey or some maple syrup or whatever. That if you choose to have those carbohydrates, whole food carbohydrates on the regular, um, I think that you should be able to do that as well, right? That's also a sign of a healthy metabolism. And I think that if you choose to eat carbohydrates and you eat whole food carbohydrates, you should be able to do that, and your body should be able to handle that. So the question then becomes, how do you know whether you can handle carbohydrates or not? Um, and what amount and which ones, right? So there's no, I mean, there there are signs as far as the total amount, right? How do I know how many carbohydrates I should eat, right? There are certain signs that you can look for that will point to you in the direction of whether you're okay with your carbohydrate intake or not, right? And some of those involve subjective feelings like how do you feel after you eat certain carbohydrates? How do you feel? You have a big if you have a big bowl of rice, right? As when you're having sushi or something like that, do you feel like you're going to take a nap? Are you incredibly hungry even though you've eaten plenty of food? Are you all mentally foggy? Is your brain clear, right? Like you can use that as a sign. Well, maybe I ate too much rice. Maybe I should cut back on the amount of rice, right? And there's also um, uh, a test that Mike T. Nelson named famous, which is kind of like a poor man's glucose tolerance test. Like you wake up in the morning and fasted, you slam two Pop Tarts, just eat two Pop Tarts, probably about 75 grams of carbohydrates, and uh, and then see how you feel. Right? I mean, do you want to crawl into your desk and take a nap immediately afterwards? Do you feel, same thing? Do you feel tired? Do you feel incredibly hungry? Do you feel, brain fog? How do you feel after that? Right? If you feel great, you probably can handle a fair amount of carbohydrates, do pretty well, right? Like you're pretty good. If you feel like you're going to take a nap and you can't function and you're incredibly hungry, like probably don't. You're probably not so well equipped to handle carbohydrates. At least that amount, right? Um, and then the other thing you can look at is the type of carbohydrates because people have different responses to different types of carbohydrates, right? There's a famous study out of Israel in the book Wired to Eat. Rob Wolf mentions this, where they gave someone a banana and other people's, chocolate chip cookies, and some people had a perfectly fine response to chocolate chip cookies, but had a terrible response to a banana, and other people had a terrible response to banana, and other people handled the banana really well, and the other people had a terrible response blood sugar wise to the cookie. And so some people have the response you blood sugar wise you would expect, and other people have a blood sugar response that you would not expect, right? Um, so again, based on some of that logic, people have different responses to different types of carbohydrates. So you can um, Google the 7-day carb test, also by Rob Wolf, and basically you pick 7 of your favorite carb sources that you like to eat. You get a blood glucometer, and you consume 50 grams of carbohydrates from that carb source, right? So you're going to test out how you deal with bananas. You're going to consume whatever equals to 50 grams of carbs from bananas, right? It could be 2 bananas, 3 bananas, 1.5 bananas, depending on the size. Measure that out. You eat that for breakfast, fasted. Um, you test your blood sugar before. You test your blood sugar 1 hour after and 2 hours after. Ideally, at 2 hours, you want to see it, down below 115. That would mean that you handle it pretty well. You probably don't want to see the spike at the 1 hour mark to be any more than 140. If it's either above 140 at 1 hour, or if it's above 115 at 2 hours, you probably want to cut the amount in half. So next time try 25 grams and try it again. And if you have the same result, then pretty much that carb source doesn't work well for you at all. So you probably want to avoid eating that carbohydrate. Um, and you also want to pay attention to subjective markers while doing this too. Same thing. How do you feel? What's your digestion like? What's your mental clarity like? What's your hunger rating like after you eat it? These all play an important role in whether you actually handle that carbohydrate or not, well or not. So that's something I regularly use with clients, and I think is an important tool in figuring out which carbohydrate sources, if you're going to consume carbs, are ones that work best for you. The other option here is to get something fancy like a CGM, a continuous glucose monitor, stick that on you, and just eat your regular diet for a week or so, see what it looks like from a blood sugar response perspective. If you have very high drops or it stays elevated for long periods of time, that's a bad sign. If you And then the second week, just go to town experimenting, try all different kinds of foods and different situations and stuff like that, and see how your blood sugar responds on the CGM. It's a little bit more pricey, but there are ways, at least in the US now, to actually get your hands on one, where before it was kind of nearly impossible unless you had a doctor's prescription. So, that's another little more techie option. So what do you do if, the question then becomes, what do you do if you notice that you're not really equipped to handle carbohydrates? Everything you eat kind of tests badly for you, right? You're one of these people that like, I can't eat any carbohydrates at all. And some people may just be, that just may be their fate. They have to limit their carbohydrates or else they just don't do well, right? It's fine, right? And I accept that. But if you're thinking you want to try and improve your ability to handle carbohydrates, what do, right? Um, I think the first thing to do is look at what your diet has been like in the past, right? What are the carbohydrates are you eating? If you're eating a bunch of processed carbohydrates, highly processed food, carbs, cut those out, right? That's the first step, is just take those out, eat a whole foods, paleo, primal diet for a while, and stick to those carb sources, and then reassess, right? Basically, you probably see a much better response to carbohydrates if you're changing the type, quality, and quantity of carbohydrates you're eating. So if you're eating processed carbs, that's step one, cut that out. That's probably step number one. Step number two, if you're already eating a whole foods diet or been eating kind of a low carb diet and want to experiment eating more carbohydrates, and you find that you don't handle them well, is to look at when you're eating them, right? So specifically, it's better to, some people find it better to consume carbohydrates around the times that they're going to be physically active. So if they're not going to be physically active in the morning, they're going to be doing a lot of sitting, etc. They probably want to stick with, a low carbohydrate meal for breakfast or whatever. And then maybe if they're going to work out in the afternoon, they'll have some carbohydrates either before or after or both their workout. The theory being that the physical activity from the workout is going to help burn off the carbohydrates and control the blood sugar response and any downstream effects from that. So basically, you can try mitigating some of the negative effects of a carbohydrate intake by physical activity. It doesn't have to be a workout. It could be just going for a walk. It could be, a jumping rope. It doesn't have to be something formal. It could just be some type of physical activity around the carbohydrate consumption. But by far, I think the best thing you can do, and I think almost everyone has room for improvement here, to help you handle carbohydrates better from a metabolism perspective, is to build lean mass. Just add some muscle to your body. The reason being is because outside of your liver, which has a small amount of ability to store carbohydrates, the next biggest place you're going to be able to put carbohydrates and glucose from carbohydrates in your body is inside muscles. So that's because we want that there so that when you use those muscles have readily available energy to actually work and contract. And uh, do what they're supposed to do. So if you add more muscle mass, you have more places to put the glucose. And if you exercise, that glucose and carbohydrate will get used. And in fact, the glucose and carbohydrates that you eat after you've exercised and depleted the muscle glycogen, the carbohydrates in your muscles, can just be placed back in there without actually no insulin, right? If you know what insulin is, like it's been demonized, as having high insulin. Well, your carbohydrates, the glucose that you get from eating carbohydrates, can go into a muscle without raising insulin at all. Like you can do it without zero insulin, right? So um, basically, adding muscle mass provides a bigger storage tank for carbohydrates and glycogen. And so, if you want to be able to eat more carbohydrates and handle them better, you just add more lean mass and then use that lean mass that you have. So basically, exercise to get more mass, and then make sure you continue to exercise to use the fuel that you need to get stored in that muscle, and you get that cycle of just continually consuming those carbohydrates and that glucose to fuel your exercise. That's by far the best thing I think anyone could do to improve their ability to handle carbohydrates. So if you find yourself as someone who doesn't handle carbohydrates really well, you have a little bit of room to get. You're not a bodybuilder, and you're not maxed out your lean mass. Like, start strength training and resistance training, and I guarantee that would uh, make things better. All right. So this video has gone along, gone on way too long already, so I'll cut it off there. If you have any questions or comments or want to know more, please reach out to me, leave me a comment below. Happy to chat about this subject. Like I said, this is a subject that I have strong feelings about, and I really like the message of a metabolism that can handle a variety of different foods and situations, etc. So please reach out if you have any questions or comments about this. Hope you find it useful. If you want to get all the content that I put out, like this, and my blog posts and newsletters and all that fun stuff, without having to stalk me on social media, you can sign up for my newsletter. If you go to rjbhealth.coach, click on the top link, and there's a newsletter link up there. You click on that and enter your email address, and you'll jump on the newsletter, and I'll send you all the stuff that I put out without you having to stalk me. If you're interested in coaching and you need some help, possibly improving your metabolism to be more flexible, to burn more fats and more carbs in the right situations and in the right circumstances, I'm happy to help out. So reach out to me there. You can go to my homepage again, rjbhealth.coach, click on the schedule discovery call button, fill out the form, and I'll get back to you, and we can set up a call to talk a little bit more about how we could work together to achieve your goals and overcome your obstacles. Happy to do that. And with that, I will wish everyone a good weekend. Have a good next week, and I'll talk to you all soon.